Hi, I'm Mark Parsons, Chief Economist at ATB Financial. We're here to talk about real estate as it pertains to the office segment. And to help me out with this, I am joined by Krista Lauridsen, who is an expert in this area and happens to lead up our real estate facilities management for ATB. So welcome, Krista.
Thanks, Mark, for having me. Excited to be here.
So why don't you introduce yourself a little bit and get our viewers?
Sure, yeah. Krista Lauridsen, as Mark said, I'm a registered architect and the head of real estate facilities design and construction at ATB. And what this means is me and my team are accountable for ATB's 1.5 million square feet of space all over the province and outside of the province, which is about 260 points of presence when you factor in our branches and all of the office space that we occupy.
Great. Well, I would like you to weigh in on what's going on with office vacancies. They've come down from the COVID peak, but they're sitting around 27% office vacancies in Calgary and around 20% in Edmonton. So can you tell us what's going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. Calgary continues to have one of the highest vacancies in North America. So in downtown proper, we're seeing vacancies sit at around 30%. And we are seeing a little bit lower in the top tier buildings, in the AA class buildings. And again, as you said, that's come down. But the interesting thing that I think we're monitoring in this space is that that's what's showing as vacant in market. But there's something called ghost vacancy that's out there too. And ghost vacancy is really interesting because it's not what's in market, but it's what's maybe unoccupied or what's sitting vacant but still under lease. And so when we think about that vacancy, we know that there's probably going to be no new office buildings coming online anytime soon, maybe in the future. But with that, we're seeing landlords invest in older assets from a sustainability perspective to bring them up to a greater level of function, a greater level of amenity. And so there's some really cool things we're seeing there. But why this matters, like why this vacancy really matters, it's a collective problem. And I think that's what's missed often. Like we often think of this as just a real estate issue and it will be solved for. But downtowns, where our office buildings are typically clustered, are the heart of cities. And they're more than just the economic heart. They're the cultural center of cities. Yeah. And so when we have this vacancy that we're seeing in somewhere like Calgary or even in Edmonton, what we're missing is that cultural center. And we're missing the tax base as well.
Yes.
And so that tax base shifts to non-residential outside of the downtown core. Mm-hmm. And we start to see things like social service shift as well.
Right. So there are two trends I'm watching really closely that I think are related to what you're talking about. One is migration to the province, which continues to be really strong. And in particular, we're seeing a lot of people come here from other provinces.
Yeah.
Alongside that is we have seen a trend in remote workers who don't necessarily work for an employer in Alberta. They might actually work for an employer outside of the province. How does the migration flows and also the shift to more remote work impact office space and office vacancies?
Yeah, hybrid work is a conundrum, right? Yeah. It's something that's been in the media nonstop, right, since really as the pandemic started. But, for the organizations that it makes sense for their operating model, I truly think hybrid is here to stay. At ATB, it's been a key part of our value proposition. And as you think about that in migration, I think that's a part of it, right? As workers coming from out of province, and you've touched on that in some of your the pieces that you've put forward. There's some challenges though that come with hybrid, right? Like we talk about it all, I think, in like capital H context often, but with hybrid, there's some realities that I think workers need to get their head around. In that working from home and also expecting to maintain space in the office is challenging. It's challenging from a vibrancy perspective. It's challenging from a culture in the office perspective, but it's also challenging from an asset performance perspective, right? And then the other piece of this that I think businesses are contending with and why this continues to be such a struggle, such a hot topic, honestly, is I think it's forcing us to review our notions of leadership and challenge some traditional ideas around leadership. And what I mean by that is like leadership by observation, leadership by walking around. I can see my people. And I think what hybrid is challenging for in that dynamic, in that dichotomy, is that's really just about presenteeism. And how do we shift the narrative from presenteeism to more results-oriented work, to what is the output, and how are we really kind of leading with trust in that space. So the cool part about all of this, right, because I know the numbers matter, is that if organizations can get it right, hybrid is seen as about a 10% pay bump because flexibility is valued that much. And in some of our research that we would monitor, some organizations, more in the tech space, would actually see workers willing to take a 25% pay cut if they can successfully roll out a hybrid or flexible work model. And there's more. If we get this right, all of our research would say that organizations are able to downsize their footprint, like how much real estate they occupy, by up to 40%.
Wow. Okay. So trying to put this all together, you're saying that hybrid is here to stay. Yeah. There are some benefits for productivity. But we also have this high office vacancy rate. So I can't help but wonder, hybrid tells me that maybe this office space won't be as in demand in the future. You're also telling me that we're not building new office, towers, anything like that. Yeah. So how are we going to get the office vacancy rate down?
Oh, see, that's the question. And I love that you asked, Mark. This is the stuff that gets me excited. And so Calgary's done some really cool things in this space about office to residential conversions. We've seen that in the news. Like, that's a pretty hot topic right now. Calgary in specific had a program that they rolled out that fostered the ability for about 20 projects to be funded. And it was a grant program that funded about 30% of the construction costs. But what those 20 projects will bring is, to your comment on in-migration, 2,500 expected residential units in and around the downtown core from that office to residential conversion. And it will bring 2.5 million square feet of vacant office space offline. So that's super cool. And it's being copied by municipalities all over North America. There's some other really innovative things that we're seeing already, and I think we continue to push the needle on. Edmonton's also playing with this residential conversion space. The downtown YMCA building that's sat vacant for a number of years is being converted into 90 affordable housing units. So again, solving for some of those social challenges that we have. And then we're seeing some other pieces as well. So the University of Calgary School of Architecture, Planning and Landscape Design recently announced that they're going to be bringing about 1,200 students to the Nexon building in West downtown. But the cool part about that and bringing education use to solve the vacancy is it creates a bit of an urban campus and starts to add eyes on the street when you factor in kind of that residential adjacent.
Right. And I think you were mentioning earlier today something about vertical farming.
Oh, yeah.
That's we're seeing some inroads into that.
We are, Vertical farming's been, I think, another one of those hot topics. And I think in 2023, investment peaked in vertical farming. It was about 6 billion, that we're seeing an investment globally in that space. Calgary is home to some vertical farming at the base of the Calgary Tower, big office building there. And I think in 2021, 2023, 65,000 square feet were occupied there for vertical farming venture. And the cool part about vertical farming is that it solves for things like urban food scarcity and some of the supply chain challenges that we're seeing with our geopolitical environment right now. Some of the other cool ways that we can solve for the vacancy challenge and that we're seeing really innovative things, hospitality. So we would have the Wesley Hotel in downtown Calgary, and that was flipped from a vacant office building. And then we're also seeing the City of Calgary partner with C-Space to convert the old fire hall and the Traveller building behind into more of an arts and culture vibrant hub.
I love this notion of an urban or downtown campus, and to me, this creates like a virtuous cycle. If you get more people, and as you say, eyes on the street, that creates a more welcoming environment, and then that creates opportunities for businesses too to set up shop.
Yeah, it does.
And at least a vibrancy.
Yeah.
Of course, we're watching this play out in Edmonton right now with the Oilers run to the Stanley Cup. And I've just witnessed myself how many people are flooding in to downtown on game night and what it's doing for local business. So I want to bring this back closer to your world.
Okay.
As,
Okay.
you're in this day in and day out. As you say, you're responsible for design and managing ATB's real estate assets. How are you approaching this kind of unique challenge? We talked about this hybrid work, these elevated vacancy rates. What does it mean to you as head of ATB's real estate assets?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think I'm passionate about space,
Yes.
Mark. But the why behind that is more than just being an architect. It's because I fundamentally believe that space matters, and it matters in shaping the human experience. It matters in shaping that lived experience. We all live and exist in built environments in some way, shape, or form. And so after the pandemic, we've seen a bit of a recalibration on the importance of wellness. Right? I think we can all agree to that. And how that's manifested in space is a desire for a greater focus on wellness in space. And wellness not only just for the purpose of existing, but for the purpose of productivity, right? And that's to put it in the context of an organization. And so when you factor in the hybrid conversation that we were just having, work's changing.
Yeah.
And we really need to respond with our workplaces. Like our workplaces need to respond to that changing work context. And so when you think about flexibility and well-being and some of those pieces, it's really about having conversations about how wellness can drive productivity, how human wellness and human performance in space can drive organizational productivity.
Yeah, I love that because if any of you have been reading my stuff, I talk a lot about productivity, but more from the perspective of an economist, and I'm like, R&D spending, investment, business investment, and stuff like that, and commercialization. But what I like about what you're saying is you're getting at actually day to day when people come into the office, what makes them productive, and the importance of space to that equation, which I love because sometimes we, as an economy, we forget about that stuff.
Yeah, and
the intangibles. And I've seen it in my own personal life and my professional life. So
yeah, it's totally fair. And there's things that maybe we can quantify, right? Like we maybe can quantify absenteeism or some of the mental health and leaves that we're seeing. And I think we'd be remiss to believe that the work environment doesn't have some impact on that.
100% does. So you've talked a lot about trends in office real estate.
Yeah.
And I want to bring it back to ATB. What are you at ATB doing in response to these trends? And what are you most proud of?
Oh, I love that question, Mark. Thanks. No, at ATB, I've talked about this or around this in our conversation today, but we believe that space matters. We don't just have offices. We have places where brilliant minds come together to create the products and strategies that make it possible. And so post-pandemic, we strategically invested in our corporate spaces in order to respond to some of these things that we're talking about. And so that investment would see us focus on flexibility, on wellness, and bringing the element of choice into our workplaces and doing that under the lens of inclusivity, under the lens of different types of work environments to respond to different work activities throughout the day. And so when we think about why people are coming in, we've been really intentional on creating spaces that support that for connection, for collaboration, for mentorship, for training, for celebration, for all of those things. And here's the cool part about all of that. So with that strategic investment, we've actually seen an increase in the utilization of the spaces that we've changed by 40% higher than traditional office spaces. And throughout this activity, we've been able to optimize our space and actually reduce the amount of space that we occupy by 50% since pre-pandemic. And so we were recognized by a global publication called Work Design Magazine for the work that we did in really leading the way as thought leaders in this space and setting the precedent for what the next hybrid work environment should look like.
Well, congratulations. That's incredible. Thanks for sharing. That is something to be proud of.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark.
Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation, Krista. I think you've kind of approached this high vacancy issue we're seeing with offices from a very different angle. You've talked about the meaning of space and how it affects the work you do at ATB. So I just want to thank you for the time and for sharing your thoughts with us today.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.